Next slide, Megan. This is a part of our Gather to Grow series. The goal of this webinar series is to share knowledge and training and workshops, create opportunities for others to learn, uplift each other's work, and support Indigenous farmers by engaging in the full process of seed and food sovereignty. These gatherings are meant to connect with other local BIPOC communities, highlight best practices, and create spaces of healing by healed people for community growth and resilience. Next slide. So before we begin, there is the chat function, the Q&A. So if you have questions throughout the webinar, we ask that you enter your question in the Q&A function or the chat, and I will make sure that's open for everyone. And now I pass it on to Chasity. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Can you all hear me and see me? Cool. Okay, I got a yes in the chat. Welcome everybody to today's webinar. My name is Chasity. I am from Acoma Pueblo, and I am a herbalist, a traditional farmer and seedkeeper. I'm also a birth worker, a community doula, and currently in the New Mexico midwifery license apprenticeship. So I'm a student midwife. And today I'm going to be sharing about traditional Southwest foods and herbs to incorporate during pregnancy. But these Southwest foods and herbs that I will be talking about also support intergenerational wellness in our Indigenous communities. And yeah, we can go to the next slide. So today we'll be learning how traditional food and plants are medicine during all 4 trimesters of pregnancy. And so I did this webinar or this presentation a few weeks ago to birth workers, nurses, doulas, lactation counselors in the state of New Mexico. It was virtual, so it's very tailored to that audience, but I think there are a lot of ways that we can understand how we commonly use traditional foods and plants in our everyday to support our families and our communities and ourselves. So we'll be learning how to prepare plant medicine for clients and for families. And then lastly, we'll learn how we are in relationality to our plant medicines every day. So oftentimes, oh, sorry, can you go back? Well, I guess it's fine. Yeah, so oftentimes when I make this presentation, I ask folks who are part of the webinar to do some self-reflection around how we are individually connected to our plant medicine, whether that is going out and harvesting our traditional foods or growing some of our traditional foods. But yeah, so I don't know if you all are near a writing source, but if you are, I would just ask the question to you all: how are you in relationship to your plant medicines and to your traditional foods as medicine? So that is something that you can jot down and just reflect about for a couple of minutes. And then we'll transition into the next part of the webinar. Okay, cool. And maybe if throughout the presentation, we can put in the chat what are the traditional food or plant that we use every day in our community or in our family for general wellness. Just so that at the end we can see the variety of ways that we use our plants and our foods. So yeah, feel free to enter that into the chat. But at the end, we'll have time for discussion as well. Cool. So we can move to the next slide. Awesome. Okay, cool. So I wanted to start off by saying that this journey of doula work and birth work and midwifery work and herbalism started in my garden, or in the field that I have been cultivating, that I started cultivating with my father way back almost 10 years ago now. And really the inspiration of creating this garden was to generate seed for our community, and also to generate education around the types of traditional seeds and foods that we use and grow every day in our fields in the Southwest, how they can be used to support family wellness, and how they can use to support childbirth and pregnancy. And so this presentation and also this work is very intersectional, to see how, we as Pueblo people were taught how to take care of our gardens, our fields, our seeds in the same light, in the same way we're taught that it is very similar to how we raise our children and how we would raise our families. And the story, or the seed and the plant relative that tells that story, is our white corn mother. And so when we are born, we're oftentimes gifted our white corn, and we hear the stories around how our white corn mother was who birth the community and birth our ways of being and our traditional ways of life. And we see throughout our life that we are gifted with abundance of white corn to either grow and give to our communities or to use for our families. And so the field that I had first started with was a large field of white corn, and I started to use that corn to give to community, but mostly to give to my clients that I was working with as a doula, because corn is very rich in nutrients, especially for all trimesters of pregnancy. And so the what you see here is the blue corn, right? And so blue corn and white corn, I use mostly white corn. I'll use during like the prenatal stages, and then the blue corn I'll use during like postpartum. The reason being is that blue corn, because of its color, is full of powerful antioxidants that help fight inflammation and protect against metabolic diseases. And so in postpartum, in the immediate postpartum stages of pregnancy, oftentimes, we're checking the baby to see how healthy, or, their health, and also like checking out essential aspects of their life, like metabolic, making sure they don't have any metabolic diseases, and helping their blood supply be healthy and flowing in their postpartum stages. And so, yeah, blue corn is really a powerful postpartum meal or a postpartum crop that I'll use. And oftentimes I see a lot of birth workers and community workers also use blue corn in the form of atole, or blue corn mush, right? Where you are grinding up the corn and then making it into like a porridge. Oftentimes I'll pair that with like anything similar to pumpkin seeds or squash, or I'll put it with like a squash porridge also. And so when I first started doing this research and this work around how we support our communities with our traditional foods, blue corn also large Acoma winter squash, which is often what I'll grow, and the Acoma yellow bean. I'm not sure if I have pictures in this presentation, but I might. I'll show that to you if I do. But oftentimes those three crops and those seeds are what I'll use for a very nourishing postpartum meal. And so traditionally, or from stories from our elders, was that the Acoma yellow bean offered a lot of, again, antioxidant properties and anti-inflammatory properties to the person, or the person who just had the baby, and also for baby when they start eating first foods, right, or solid foods after breast milk. And so like traditionally the stories are that we would serve like the winter squash because it provides like all the warmth in postpartum that is needed for healing, and then the yellow bean because the yellow bean is high in omegas, omega-3s and omega-6s, yeah, to provide more of that healing and building up the blood. So yeah, you'll see, let's see, what other do I have? Okay, so also blue corn contains fiber, which can help alleviate constipation, which is often common in childbirth. And it is easier, blue corn is a lot easier to digest than yellow corn and sometimes white corn. Yeah. Cool. I also wanted to mention that we work a lot with warm foods, right? And so any way that you can think of your traditional foods or your traditional crop, what we grow here in the Southwest and the Pueblos here in the Southwest are generally like our beans, our winter squash, and we'll grow gourds, we'll grow corn, chili. So all of those are very warming foods. And so the best way to provide meals in all trimesters of pregnancy with our traditional foods is anything warm. So making a soup or making a porridge, and all of that is going to support the birthing parent and the baby, to the birthing parent, mostly their bodies, to return back to homeostasis or to return back to like their healing state. And so oftentimes what I like to share with people about childbirth is that it's not a game, but it's kind of like it's an experience with blood, right? So when childbirth happens, there is blood loss, right? And so the more that you can support the blood supply in the body, which is with nourishing and warm meals, eating a lot of greens, so eating a lot of like the green crops that we grow, like kale, spinach, all the beans that have the omegas, that all supports the iron content in the blood, which building the iron content in the blood oftentimes will help with supporting less chances of postpartum hemorrhage, of hemorrhaging, and will just make a general like experience of birth a lot healthy and well. So yeah. The next slide here are sorry, I'm used to like this presentation having more of like the traditional foods, but oftentimes what I'm focusing a lot now on are plant medicines that we harvest and that we use also for pregnancy. So yeah, I have like my notes in the presentation are a little different, but yeah, let me see. What other notes do I have on the beans and the corn? Okay, cool. Yeah, some of my notes that I have here say that beans are a source of choline, um, a vital nutrient for a baby's brain and nervous system development, which is passed through breast milk. And here, the notes that I have is that squash is nourishing, hydrating, and replenishes vitamins that are lost during blood loss in childbirth. And so squash is, again, high in fiber, which helps promote regular bowel movements and can prevent or it can help relieve postpartum constipation. Squash also supports immune function because it's high in vitamin A and vitamin C. Squash provides essential minerals like potassium, iron, and magnesium to help restore the body's balance. And oftentimes we'll encourage, like in prenatal visits, we'll encourage the birthing parent to really incorporate their minerals into their diet. So potassium, iron, magnesium, and oftentimes I'll have people eat, or consume like alfalfa or squash, because it really replenishes the minerals in their bodies. And that is, having that high mineral content in your body is very important during the first and the second trimester of pregnancy. Squash also boosts lactation. It's a nutrient-dense food. It contributes to the overall nutrition needed for healthy breast milk. It's a lactogenic, meaning that they help increase milk supply. It is also a healthy carbohydrate, and so it's a good source of lasting energy, helping to combat the the fatigue and the also some of the emotional experiences, especially during postpartum, like anxiety and postpartum depression. Yeah, okay, now we can move to the next slide. Cool. So again, the question that I have for you all today is, what are the connections to our plant medicine allies and our healing foods to our spiritual, physical, mental, emotional, ecological journeys of healing and pregnancy and birth? So I often ask that question to the clients that I work with, and also to their families and to their communities and their support system, just so that we can generate a a cohesive and pretty profound understanding of how we will continue to work with plant medicines, beyond the experience of birth, but how we incorporate and how we understand that, the health of babies and families continues. It starts at birth and continues on for the rest of their life, and how we are in relationship to the plants that support us in that journey. And so I oftentimes, what I think that is really helpful in these prenatal visits, postpartum visits, and also just working with families on their path to wellness, is to really hone in on this idea that we have the autonomy to work with the plant medicines that we desire and that have been in our families for many, many generations. And so, yeah, I always ask people to connect to, approach their healing, and also to approach their family in the ways that they are connected to the land and to plants in their spiritual, physical, mental, emotional, and ecological bodies. Because oftentimes, as Indigenous people or Native people, our bodies are not just physical; they are connected to everything else, right? That we're taught to understand that we are made of. And so, yeah, I just always inquire and have people think about their ways that they're connected to plants and food. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Okay, awesome. More photos of the field. So again, this presentation was to share how this journey of birthwork really starts and began in the field, right? And began in the gardens. And so oftentimes I'll learn from the plants themselves. And so what you'll see here on the left is an example of all of the three nourishing postpartum crop that I'll use. And, we all know the story about the three sisters of how they are compatible plants and seeds to grow with each other. But they also are compatible in the ways that they contribute to family wellness. And so, whenever I'm at loss or when I'm, don't know, when I need answers, right, in this work, I'll often refer to how the corns, the beans, and the squash all provide nutrients to each other and themselves and in the field, but also that they are like the staples of our health and our wellness. And in childbirth, it becomes very apparent in postpartum. And then I also wanted to talk about, I'm not sure if I have a photo of it in here, but the amaranth seed, right? And so I think we're learning a lot, especially in the Southwest, learning a lot about amaranth and how amaranth is sort of the fourth or the fifth sister in the garden and is a superfood, right? And it offers a lot of nutrients to not only the postpartum experience, but also, okay, cool, I have a photo 2 slides ahead. But also to our everyday and to the general public. And so yeah, so oftentimes what I have learned is that, traditionally we would plant like the sunflower and the amaranth around like the field that you see right here on the right, which is the same field. They're both the same, just different photos. But yeah, so they'll act like as our protectors of the field. And then you have like the traditional way of planting the three sisters in the middle. And all of those, the sunflower, the amaranth, the corn, the beans, and squash are all awesome crop to serve during prenatal and to postpartum. And I'll go more into detail when we get to that slide. So we can go to the next one. Cool. Yeah, so this picture is of the Acoma pumpkin and also the Acoma squash, which is where this journey again of making the connection between our traditional foods and birth work and childbirth really began, because when I started to make a lot of dishes with the squash and the pumpkin, and really giving it to families and to clients and to have them try it. I saw a lot of like improvement in like postpartum healing, with the warmth and also supporting lactation. And just like when I eat the squash for myself too, it helps a lot with like the dryness that we experience during winter. It helps a lot with like bowel movements and digestion. And so yeah, and then also our first foods to our babies when they start to eat first foods and solid foods. The squash and the pumpkin is an awesome anti-inflammatory and antioxidant rich first food for them to taste. And so, and our belief is that we are people of the gardens, we are people of the fields. And so sometimes our ways of returning back to the earth or returning back to our land is having our umbilical cord buried but into the fields that we come from. And so I think that the squash and the pumpkin, the Acoma squash and pumpkin, really tell that connection, tell that story of how we return back to the land. And yeah, because this is like we first taste the earth, we first taste the squash and the pumpkin, and that like connects us to where these were grown, right? And so yeah, I like to share that story oftentimes because I think it's really profound to think about the ways that we return back to the land, not only during like birth and death, but also throughout our lives, as we are stewards to the land, as we are stewards to these seeds and to these foods. So yeah, next slide. Okay, cool. So here is the amaranth here. And let me see if I have stuff in my notes that I can share. Are there folks in the webinar that work with amaranth? Maybe you could put it in the chat if you do, and if so, how do you work with amaranth? So I'll share that when so amaranth is again a superfood. It has so many antioxidant properties. It is very nourishing in all the minerals that we need. It is a plant and a crop that, again, that as I was sharing, that has been sort of revitalized back into our communities in the Pueblos. And amaranth is a seed that is very special and revered by our relatives down in the South, who actually supported us in bringing some of the stories and the importance of the seed to back to our Pueblo communities. And so, you know, the importance of this seed, what I have been learning in my community is that it was a protector of our fields and also a superfood during childbirth. And so oftentimes the atole form, which is the seeds that you see here on the left, you grind them up and then make them into like a porridge again, and use that in postpartum and also in prenatal stages, but mostly in postpartum. Use that as a porridge, and it's like provides so many nutrients for the healing stages during postpartum. And yeah, I remember when I first started growing it in the community, folks would ask me what it was, and then I would tell them like, it's amaranth, and like here's the wild version of it. It grows everywhere. And there was just like floods of stories of from people, from elders who talked about the remembrance of this plant and the way that it used to grow in our fields, and the ways that we used it. So you can use the seed, right, which is you harvest from the picture on the right is when the seed was about almost ready. So the seed's about ready, and if you plant it in the middle of May, it's usually ready like the beginning of September. And so what you'll do is, of course, take the seeds off of the tops here, shake them off, and then you winnow them like here on the left. And then you also can eat the plant when it is about 6 inches to a foot tall. And you can eat all the greens. You can saute them. And that also provides a lot of nutrients to the blood and prenatal. And so oftentimes I'll work with like amaranth leaves or amaranth greens, and then I'll work with like any kind of berry that's growing around, like a wolfberry or sumac berries. And because when you pair iron support through greens and through meat, you often want to pair it with vitamin C, right? Because that helps the body absorb the iron. And so I'll work with both of those plants, like berries, or like woods rose, like the wild rose, which is generally pink, or the cliff rose, which is yellow. And I'll make that into some type of meal, and that's a very awesome prenatal like meal to give to people and to families. Cool. We can go to the next slide. Okay, cool. So we have photos here of just community-based and also midwifery-based education. So both of these um, photos here I took while, learning. The one on the right, we were having a cupping session where we were learning how to do cupping with like body work and massage. But it was during a break that we had learning about midwifery emergency skills. And then the left here was actually taken in when I traveled to Cuba, and we were learning about how to practice midwifery skills, midwifery during, climate disasters, and learning about ways to be climate change prepared when it comes to midwifery and offering in person and offering, like medical support and offering support when people are giving birth. And so, yeah, I often like to include this slide and these photos in presentations like this to show that, this education about how our communities understand nourishment and wellness is oftentimes not learned in, in the medical way, in the medical system, in schools. It's often learned in community. And so I often share that the photo on the right, we were using gourds to help with the cupping or to support cupping. And I remember like when we first learned of that, I was very like intrigued and very excited because we grow gourds right in our fields, in our gardens, and to learn of the ways that you can use it for body work was awesome. And so with the gourds, you want to grow a gourd that's about maybe about 5 inches, so smaller gourds. And then what you do is, of course, you craft them and make them to like a cup, right? And then you like wet the top of the gourds every time you use them as suction cups. And so yeah, I was very intrigued when we learned that, and I've used gourds on myself in suction cupping, or in cupping, and it was very effective. And so I have not used it yet on anybody else, but I think that's something that I want to incorporate into my practice. Yeah, so it's just a photo to show that, not only our foods are traditional seeds used to eat internally, but they can also be used in other ways to support our healing. Cool, we can go to the next slide. Awesome. Okay, so again, we have a photo of the winter squash, which is growing here on the right, the Acoma winter squash, which is here on the right. And then I like to talk about how the different plants. So in what I'm learning oftentimes in midwifery work is that, when when in their final, in the third trimester, baby is moving a lot. Some babies have a lot of room right in the womb, and so they'll move and they'll move. And of course, the best way for a baby to be born, right, is to be head down. And oftentimes in prenatal visits, we'll talk about ways that, we can support the most optimal way of birthing, right, for the baby and the birthing parent. And so what I've included here on the left is a photo of, we were learning how to do moxa. And so moxa is, burning herb over the body. And so in massage school, I learned of the different points, right, that you can do moxa or acupressure to help, turn baby if the baby is breech, if the baby is, their head is up and not down. And I thought that was very fascinating because we learned that, just by the act of burning some of our plants, that we can help support, the optimal way of birthing. And so here, so often moxa, when you are doing moxa, you burn mugwort, right? But what I have learned too is that you can burn other plants, such as the different type of sages that we have growing here in New Mexico in the Southwest. And it works just as effectively. And oftentimes, like the salt content in our salt and the mineral content in our sage, the types of sages that we have out here will support some of that, like that aromatherapy, right? That helps support optimal birthing positions, and also that supports, relieving of helping support muscles, relieving tension in muscles. And again, I don't know if I have a photo of it in our presentation today, but um, what we've learned is that, the ways that we used to use like our salt brushes here, salt brush sage here, was to provide foot baths, foot baths for farmers and also for birthing people. Um, and it was used generally as a smoke medicine. And so it was really to have that aromatherapy effect when folks were going through, a challenging time and a traumatic time. And oftentimes what I'll teach people in childbirth education or working with families is that, we can have the most planned and the most like preyed upon birth that we come together with our families, but sometimes birth is traumatic, right? And so I think the more that we can incorporate some of our plants like the salt brush, the sage, salt brush sage, rosemary, other plants that I'll talk about in the presentation to provide that aromatherapy, the more that we do that, the more that we support, this experience of this traumatic experience sometimes to be one of that people can process, right? And so a lot of work that I do as a I'm kind of going on a tangent here, but often the work that I do as a doula is to help people support people in processing their birth stories and processing, how they have come to understand what type of support that they had or that they didn't have and that they need in order to grow and to nourish their families. And oftentimes I'll like include in there, and oftentimes families will just come up with it on their own, like the types of foods and plants that could have been supportive. Um, and the ways that they'll incorporate them into their life moving forward. And so, yeah, we'll go to the next slide. Cool. We can go to the next slide. Cool. I think that slide was to just wrap up the ways that we use traditional crops and seeds. And now we'll be moving into more of the plant medicines that you can harvest or that grow here in the Southwest. And we'll begin with talking about the wolfberries, which I talked about a little bit before. And so, they are high in vitamin C. And so oftentimes when you're working to, again, build your iron content in your blood, with, leafy greens, with meat, with broths, with bone broths, like you oftentimes want to pair that again with something high in vitamin C, to support that absorption component of it. So yeah, so oftentimes what I'll do is I'll harvest the wolfberries and make a poultice, or make a juice with it. They teach us that like the wolfberries and any kind of berries that are found, the wolfberries and the woods rose that are found around our community are children's medicine, because children, they are more prone to take their medicines when they are sweet, and oftentimes something sweet can be digestible for them. And so wolfberries is an awesome alternative, right, to anything that is like very sweet. It helps balance blood sugar levels and it supports the immune system. And so yeah, we can go to the next slide. I know we're kind of running out of time, so I won't go into too much depth, but I wanted to share like generally what I work with. So here we have the 3-leaf sumac berries, and I like to incorporate the different types of berries that grow around us and the ways to use them. And so what I'll do is I'll gather the sumac berry, and you have to gather it when it is like in this stage in this picture to the right here, which is usually like, I want to say the end of June, early July. And you'll know like when they're a little bit juicy. So if they're like dry and they pop easily in your fingers, to me that is like it's a little bit too late to harvest them, for this purpose of drying them and then grinding it into a powder. And so that's what I'll do. I'll grind it into a powder, and then I'll add it to any type of, I'll put like salt in it, and then I'll give that to like families and to clients to really work with their hydration and help with their electrolyte balance in their bodies, because electrolytes and proper hydration is very essential, especially during prenatal stages, because in prenatal stages, your blood volume is increasing by so much, and so is your water content in your body. It increases, right? Because it's growing a baby. And so having the blood and the water supply in your body be very balanced and to be healthy is very, very important. And so dehydration can also cause birth complications. And so it's very important to be really hydrated during prenatal stages. And so yeah, that's what I'll do, is give folks sumac powder with salt in it, and then have them add like lemon and honey to their water and drink that every day. And that really helps support their electrolytes and their hydration. What else here? 3-leaf sumac supports blood sugar levels and kidney function. Cool. We can go to the next slide. I'm going to take a little pause to drink some water. Cool. Okay. I had to take a little pause because yeah, this is getting into the good stuff. All of it's good stuff, but yeah, the red raspberry leaf is an awesome plant for um all trimesters of pregnancy, because it is a uterine tonic, which means it helps the uterus become stronger. And so, during childbirth, there's a lot of uterine contractions that happen. And so the more that your uterus is what's the word, strong, and really responds to the hormones and to the contractions and to everything that's happening during childbirth, the more like healthier outcomes that you'll have. And so it has this component. The raspberry leaf itself has this component of fragrin, which is a uterine tonic. And so it is good to drink and to have during prenatal, and then also during postpartum, to help some of that like postpartum healing. And red raspberry leaf supports an increase in iron levels also, which again, I think we all have this understanding now of how increasing iron levels supports a healthy birth. And then it also, because you are experiencing a blood loss during childbirth, helping, the iron content in your blood will support reducing the risk of hemorrhage, postpartum hemorrhage. And so all around, red raspberry leaf is a awesome plant to have. And so here there are photos of me growing red raspberry leaf, or red raspberries in the field. And this year they're getting a little bit taller. This was from last year, so they're about twice as tall. And you can also harvest raspberries In the mountains, they grow more of in a mountainous climate. They need a lot of water, and yeah, so that is a awesome plant that I love working with. So we can go to the next slide. The next here is a plant that we all, if we are in the Southwest, we're all very familiar with. It's the Indian tea or the Kota tea. We call it Tishkawi in Acoma, and it's an awesome plant for the urinary tract, right, in general. So it supports urine activity, it helps you go pee, it helps you go poop, it helps digestion, it helps bowel movements. It also supports the kidney, right? So the kidneys functions a lot is to support the pumping out toxins from the blood, and also to keeping our waters in our bodies to be ever flowing and to be nourishing of our bloodstream and also of ourselves. And so what the Kota tea does, it helps support both of the kidneys and also the urinary tract, all the organs involved that help, or all the organs involved in peeing and pooping. In prenatal stages during the third trimester, it's oftentimes will oftentimes be looking out to make sure that the birthing parent doesn't have any signs of UTIs, right? Because UTIs can complicate childbirth. And so if there is a UTI present, the Kota tea can often help flush that out or help take care of that. And so what oftentimes I'll encourage people to do is to drink a couple of cups a day of this. I would do like a handful of the tea, and I will put it in about 3 cups of water and boil that until the water is it's like a good dark brown. It's made like the brown of this leaf on the left here. It's funny that there's a color range on the slideshow, but yeah, so I'll have folks make that type of concoction or tea, and have people drink, their birthing person drink a couple cups of it a day if there is a UTI present. Yeah, I see a chat in here that says corn silk is also very helpful. So yeah, corn silk works in similar ways to Kota tea when looking at UTIs, or folks have UTIs. So corn silk is just, the hairs that grow in the corn when you're harvesting it green. Cool, we can go to the next slide. Okay. Cool. Just looking at time here. Cool. So the next plant that we have here, which is what I was talking about a little bit earlier about the salt and the mineral content of the silver sagebrush. So oftentimes, like I said, it was used for farmers, for their feet, for people, experiencing any kind of muscle aches or body aches, and even joint pain. Oftentimes, there is a mixture that is made of the sagebush, and then also of the Indian blanket. I don't know the scientific word for that plant, but it is like it's the plant that grows, it's like a flower, right, that has red in the middle and then yellow on the outside. I think that I might have a picture in here, but yeah, both of those can be used to make like a bath, right, an herbal bath to support relieving muscle pain and joint pain. And I have here, it was used for swelling feet during prenatal and postpartum. We can go to the next slide. Cool. So next here we have juniper. And juniper again is a very it's a very special and very important plant in our communities. It grows everywhere, especially in Acoma, and we use it a lot for its smoke medicine properties, right? And so it's used to do a lot of clearing of our areas, clearing of it supports a lot of our clearing of our emotional bodies, our emotional experiences, some of our spiritual experiences, and it is one of the plants that is used during postpartum, right? And so there are stories about how juniper is used to support like the protection of the baby and the birthing family, the birthing parent, right? Because the postpartum stage is oftentimes very vulnerable. What a part of childbirth education that I tell folks is not, the pregnancy doesn't just stop when the baby is born. There's a whole nother trimester, right? Which is postpartum. And in many cultures, there's, beliefs that the postpartum era or time extends far beyond than, a couple of weeks. It's like 40 to 60 days or 100 days or 200 days, and then often, or the baby's entire life, right? And so I think the experience of postpartum can alter the type of energetic and like spiritual ways that we're of our lives, right? And so I think that juniper supports that process and that journey. And juniper is used, in non-pregnancy. It's used to really help cleanse our bodies, to help again with our bowel movements, and to just help some of this like this ancestral way of understanding how we cleanse. And so it's used similarly with smoke medicine, and also just to have it around during postpartum or to have it around during childbirth is really powerful. And it's used can be used to stop hemorrhaging after a miscarriage, which again is another, I think miscarriage is an experience that is one again of the emotional body. And so I think the more that we're able to incorporate smoke medicine and just having plants around as medicine into our everyday is how we, understand the different what's the word? The different mediums that plants help support our wellness. And so it's not always just drinking teas or taking tinctures or taking oxymils, or it's also like just having the plant around and burning it and believing in its protection. So yeah, I'll go to the next slide. Let me read this note about time. Okay, awesome. So the next plant here that we may all be familiar with again is the orange globe mallow. I love orange globe mallow. It is an awesome, awesome plant to support so many ailments. It supports it's mucilaginous. Its leaves and its flowers are mucilaginous, meaning that they're very slimy, and their constituents are very slimy and slippery. And so they're really helpful to relieving any kind of pain associated with like the stomach lining, any kind of dry cough that we have. It helps coats the lungs. And so when you're experiencing any dryness in the lungs, like a dry cough or a lingering illness, a lingering respiratory illness is often used to help support, alleviate some of the pain and to help speed up the healing process. It's used a lot for moisturizing our hair and our skin. And I think during the depths of the pandemic that we experienced or are experiencing still, I think this plant really tells the story of how it can support our overall wellness. And then I started to talk with people about how it was used during childbirth, and they talked about how because it's very slimy constituents in the body and how it works in the body, and can help support young mothers, because their bodies, and young mothers because their bodies are still developing, right? And so it was used to like help support their childbirth. experience. And so this tea was made during prenatal stages. Oftentimes when I talk about like childbirth, I'll talk about how like the birth of the baby is the first part of birth, right? And then the second part is the birth of the placenta, which also can come with its challenges and its come with its challenges. And so what I learned about the magic of the globe mallow is that it would support a easier delivery of the placenta also. And so I think my next learnings that I have is to understand how, right? And but oftentimes the way that I practice herbalism and the ways that I practice plant medicine and learn about plant medicine is to just by experience, by using the plants in the best ways that I know how. And I think like when I drink Globe Mellow, when I use Globe Mellow, when I work with Globe Mellow, I can really understand how it like works in the body to bring along these easier processing and these easier ways of life, I guess you could say. So yeah, we can go to the next slide. Cool. So next we have the Indian paintbrush, which is oftentimes found like in areas where there was burns, right? It likes really disturbed soils. And so you'll see it like in burn scars in the mountains, or you'll find it a lot in the more western part of Acoma, where the soil is a lot more hardy. And and so this plant was used for a foot bath for swelling of the feet and body aches in the prenatal stages. And you can also use it for a whole body bath for the same reasons, to support like any swelling, any type of normal pregnancy edema that may be happening in the lower extremities, the feet. And in the hands. And then of course, we oftentimes are looking at how progressed the edema is, because edema can also be a sign of a birth complication. And so, when I'm working with plants with, that support like relieving swelling feet and edema signs, it like really encourages me to understand like the different stages of how or just to understand and be aware of the different stages of edema, and how some can be harmful and how some are normal. And so I like to think about how some plants like they draw our attention and they keep us very aware and keep us grounded in our practices with how we're using them. And so that's the story of that plant. We can go to the next one. Cool. I'll go through these really quickly because I've just included these plants in here that are not actually about that plants that I wouldn't generally recommend during pregnancy, but that are really helpful plants for intergenerational and wellness in our communities. So the next plant that I have here is the Grandelia, or the gumweed. It grows all in the fields and all in the gardens, and oftentimes people don't like it because it's an annoying weed, but it's actually very medicinal. And it supports a lot of like it supports respiratory illnesses, it supports respiratory symptoms. And the best way that I have been working with Grandelia is by making it into a honey. So putting the Grandelia tops, which are on the picture here on the right, you can see them more. They're like the top the tops of them are white, and so it has like that gummy texture. It's like gum. And I will put them in honey. And so Grandelia with the honey is really helpful during post-COVID, right? When you have a post-COVID infection, and to really support the healing and prevent long COVID symptoms, which is like all the lingering effects that COVID has. It helps support that in our respiratory system. And so yeah, it has many other awesome properties, and I encourage people to do some good research about Grandalia. We can go to the next slide. Cool. So the next photo that we have here is yarrow. Yarrow is found again in like the mountainous areas. Yarrow loves water, but it's also very resilient. It's a very resilient plant. So all the tops here that you see, the white and pink tops here that you see, they all have like really tiny seeds. And so once that top falls just by wind into the soil, into the ground, it'll just continue to grow. And so because I was processing yarrow, or using processing yarrow in my backyard, like now yarrow's growing everywhere. And so yeah, the white, I can talk forever about yarrow because it is one of my favorite plants to use. But um essentially it is a awesome protector plant, right? So again, similar to the juniper, just having the plant around, using its smoke medicine, and also believing in its strength to protect you and your family during postpartum or during any time of large life experiences. Yarrow will do that. Yarrow is a blood mover, it's a blood builder, and it's a blood cleanser. And so yarrow, I like to talk about the intelligence of plants, right? So there's a word for it in like herbalism or scientific word for it, but it's this idea that plants have their own intelligence. So they're their own bodies, and they work within our bodies in the best ways that they know. And so when it comes to blood, the yarrow can either thin the blood or it can thicken the blood. And so it's very important to think about dosages and to think about ways that you work with the RO when you are working, especially working with it, especially for pregnancy and all trimesters of pregnancy. And yeah, it's like really important to think about like how you're using it and for what purpose. And so oftentimes what I'll do is I'll use the yarrow flowers during postpartum, and I'll use it for a herbal sitz bath or like an herbal mixture for bathing or for steaming to help really do have some of that blood clotting properties, but through like steam or through smoke, or through baths. And so yeah, oftentimes I'll encourage people to use it mostly in postpartum, and also use it externally and not using it like through tincture form and stuff. But yeah, it's an awesome plant. I love yarrow. We're gonna go to the next slide. Cool. Rose hips is very, very similar to the wolfberries and to the woods rose that I've been talking about. It's high in vitamin C, and it's a heart and blood tonic. It's immune boosting and absorbs iron and nettles. So oftentimes I'll make a mixture of like nettles, rose hips, alfalfa, sumac berries powder, and I'll mix that all together. And that's an awesome like prenatal like tea or drink to have for folks. Yeah, we can go to the next slide. Again, the woods rose here that we find a lot in the Southwest can be added to like a postpartum tea blend, or it can be added to a prenatal tea blend. Yeah, we can go to the next slide. Cool. The next plant that we have here is the nettle plant. Nettles grows again in the mountainous areas. And these pictures here are really cool because the one on the left here that is found in the Jemez Mountains. So I'll harvest a lot of my plants that I say mountainous plants in the Jemez Mountains. And then this picture here on the right is actually the plant, the nettle plant in Washington, where I just recently traveled to. And so it's so cool to see like the difference between size. This one was huge, and I had to take a picture of my hand next to it. But yeah, nettles is an awesome plant for pregnancy. It supports the iron in the blood. which can help with reducing risk of anemia or helping reduce the risk of anemia. And so anemia oftentimes is what will sometimes, I'll rephrase this, sometimes we'll see like anemia be present, right, in some of our clients. And I think that having people understand what that means for childbirth is really important, because I think oftentimes we generalize things, right? Like we live in this this age of generalizing our health, right? And so oftentimes when people hear that they're anemic or that they have diabetes or gestational diabetes, all of that, I think it kind of scares them. And so what I'll do as a doula or working with families is to support people in understanding what that means and how ways to support their anemic levels, and also to support their diabetes or gestational diabetes, and to really understand how plants and also how our traditional foods have so much strength to really to turn those experiences around, and help having people like have that connection with the plants and the foods. And so yeah, I don't know why I went on that tangent, but it's like it's a really important piece of herbalism and also of birth work, is to help people understand that, you know, these words that may sound really big, overwhelming, and scary, and they are very important, but they're also, it's important for us to understand the ways in the plants that we can work with to support these experiences. So yeah, that's my tangent. So nettles are bioavailable. They have bioavailable vitamins and minerals needed, essential in prenatal. And nettles also have blood clotting factors to support the chance of postpartum hemorrhage. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Cool. Again, I have been talking about how it is important to be hydrated, to have electrolyte balance during prenatal stages of prenatal stages, those trimesters. And so plants that support that or can support that are plants like oats and alfalfa, because they're minerally rich. So the oat, we'll use oat straw, right, which is on the picture here on the left. You'll see the straw is just the bottom of the oats, and then the tops, which is where the milk is in the oats, milky oats, is used. That mixture oftentimes is used for supporting lactation and milk supply with the milky oat tops. And then the oat straw oftentimes is used to support, you know, this minerally rich tea. It's also the whole plant, but mostly the milky oat tops are a gentle nervine, so they support the nervous system, so helping with like general anxiety, any type of, you know, anxiety or emotional experiences around birth. It's really important to have those be supported. And then yeah, supports lactation and postpartum. And then right here, you'll see on the right is the alfalfa, the wild alfalfa growing. This plant often grows like in the ditches, right? The areas where our lands get water, because our lands are very dry. But with the places where water does go, you'll start to see wild alfalfa growing. And then the left here is just cultivated oats that I grow in the garden. You can go to the next slide. Cool. Last echinacea, last plant that I have here is echinacea. I don't know about recommending echinacea during pregnancy. But yeah, I don't think you would. But I've included this slide in here and these pictures in here to show the different ways that, you know, we could cultivate some of these plants. Oh, I know what. So we oftentimes in my talks with herbalism and plant medicine, I'll include a slide in there to talk about, you know, the ways that we understand ourselves as herbalists or as people who work with plant medicine closely and dearly. is to understand the ways that we can mitigate our impact on the plants, because the plants themselves have ecosystems and they have their own their own livelihoods. And so oftentimes what I'll tell people is that, if you can grow the plant, that is the best way to have it be part of your day, your everyday. And so you'll see this picture, both of these pictures here are of the echinacea that I have growing in my garden. And yeah, so like I'll often talk about how some plants can be used in as an alternative to plants that may be really threatened right now, whether that be by climate change, by the drying of our lands, or by over harvesting, right? There's a lot of over harvesting that I think happens when it comes to herbalism. And so I think some of our ways of practicing our Pueblo ways and our native and our indigenous ways of understanding plant medicine is to understand that they also need chances to thrive and to live the plants themselves. And so the more that we're able to bring down our footprint that we have on these plants is the better it is to work with them. And so yeah, I always like to tell, like, I think that the echinacea tells that story a lot for me, because when I first started on this journey, I was like, there's no way I can grow echinacea. Like I love echinacea a lot, but there's no way. And then it just like abundantly grew in my garden. And so yeah, and then of course echinacea is it's a plant that supports our immunity, right? It supports coughs, colds, it supports digestion. It also it's a relative that is very sacred to many other indigenous cultures and native cultures, and they have like so many like just so many uses of echinacea. And so yeah, I'll leave it to you all to do your research about echinacea. We can go to the next slide. Cool. I think we might be almost done here. But yeah, the plants that I have here are the dandelion, the chamomile, and the lavender. This slide, I'll talk about how we support our bodies with really gentle plants. And so the dandelion, the chamomile, lavender, they're all plants that are very gentle to our bodies, but they also have a lot of power in what they do. And so I'll start with the dandelion. The dandelion, which you'll often see growing again, like in mountainous areas, or places where there is a lot of water. But wild dandelion, of course, has the yellow flower, and you can eat the leaves. So the leaves, yeah, you can eat the green leaves of wild dandelion. And so oftentimes what I'll do is harvest the flower and the leaves and cook the greens, and then also use the flower to make like an oxymil, which is apple cider vinegar plus honey. And that's a very gentle way to serve medicine, especially for vulnerable folks like or more sensitive folks like children or elders, or people who have many layers of their health. And so dandelion supports digestion, supports liver function, supports iron levels, and helps alleviate mild edema. And so yeah, I'll include that sometimes in like prenatal tea mixes or tea blends. And I've recently used it also with someone who was having kidney problems, just wanting to boost their kidney function. And so I put some of that dandelion in there. The root, you can also harvest the root, and the root has a lot of the medicine in it. And then here I have chamomile and lavender, both growing in the garden. They support digestion, boost immune system, support sleep cycles, decrease stress and cortisol. And then the lavender is also stress reducing and anti-inflammatory. And both of these plants are great to use during prenatal to, again, support the emotional body and prepare it for childbirth. Cool. We can go to the next slide. Okay, cool. Lastly, I think this is the last slide. We had the New Mexico primrose. So even in primrose, oil is oftentimes, it has this there's a story associated with it around how evening primrose oil can help the cervix, right? Help dilation during childbirth. And so I have never personally used New Mexico primrose oil for that purpose, but I have used it to support skin irritations and rashes. So I've made like an oil out of New Mexico primrose, which is often, we can find that if you are in the Southwest, you oftentimes see that. It's the bright white flower that's growing right on the bottom or right on top of the soil. And I've used that a lot for like skin rashes, and I used it once for a spider bite that I had, and it really helped help that healing process. And so, yeah, next slide. Cool. Again, the slide in here that I have in here is about plants that have a lot of strength when it comes to just having them around, and their smoke medicine. So cedar is another one. It helps with postpartum protection. Oftentimes, or like some of the stories that I'm listening to now as a birth worker, about how juniper and cedar both worked in our communities, is that they would serve as our homes, right? And so there's stories that about how these plants reserve this area of healing and this time of healing during the postpartum stages. And so, when I talk with like elders or people about how birth was in the good days, in the good old days, it's that there was a lot of purpose and intentionality to supporting the healing and to have support, right, in the postpartum stage in our pueblos, in our communities. And oftentimes that look like, the family, the birthing parent, and the baby to have their time to really have that process of breastfeeding or chest feeding to be something that is like secured in the utmost importance. And also that was supported by these plants to like really build this like barrier between them and the community, so that they can heal and do what they need to do. And then also the plants also bring in this like sense of support, right? So the plants not only create a barrier, but they also invite, through their medicine and through their our relationship to them, invite the sense of profound community support, because birth is an experience and an event that needs to be supported. And so, yeah, I oftentimes associate cedar with that teaching, or a retelling of that teaching. So, next slide. Cool. We've made it to the end. Thank you all, Toa, for listening to my presentation. And yeah, if we have any questions, I can take them at this time.
Yeah, we had a couple of questions. Let's see. Could we make an oil or tincture spray if we have to give birth in the hospital, since I'm sure they won't allow smudging?
Yeah, you can definitely use a spray.
Cool. And then let's see. The other one is the orange globe mallow for prenatal time, or are the leaves and flowers used, or just the roots?
The globe mallow leaves and flowers are used during prenatal. And then the root is oftentimes used for the other like respiratory symptoms, to support, how would I say this? So to support the respiratory system, you would use more so the root, but then to use it during pregnancy, you would use it during prenatal, and you would use the leaves and the flower.
Cool. And that is all the questions that I have. Someone also wanted to know if the slides were available, and I said that we will be uploading this on our YouTube channel. However, I did insert Chastity's email in the chat, so if you want to follow up with her individually, it is there. And that is it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
y'all.